Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
All right, welcome. I guess first we should maybe start out with let's pour one out for the Artlist.io people. A couple of people let me know that the last stream, which was wildly successful, and that's probably why, because of Mike Sowers. But yeah, it was flagged for using royalty-free music. We're gonna keep it going as long as we can on that front. I would think that a stream that says artlist.io, like, I don't know, 60 times in the first 7 minutes would be better advertising for them than if I were to pay them $10 a month, but we're neither here nor there. It'll be short-sighted on their part. Don't regret it. I keep receipts. But welcome in. Let's chat claimers. I promise that this wasn't necessitated by the Twitter event this morning about claimers and a horse that we may have claimed. It was a long time coming. I was going to maybe get Poker Player, which is Dreeny Park, and Ghost on, but Poker Player is a cunt, and he does things on the weekends, unlike spending time with you guys. So you should let him know that, he's no more important than the rest of us, and we get better together. But let's get into it. Claimers. If you're not racing claimers, you're making a humongous mistake. Now, if your only horse is a filly, you shouldn't race it in claimers. If you have a racing colt and you've never tried claimers, one, you either have like a 5-figure horse or you're legitimately racing things wrong. So if you're brand new to the game and maybe even brand new to horse racing, claiming is a race format that allows anybody to purchase a horse for a stated price of all the horses that have entered a given race before the race is run. And if multiple people claim that horse, then it's a random drawing as to which stable gets it, or depending on how many burner stables you have in PFL, you can probably improve your chances of getting that horse. Don't do it. There's a few things I don't like. That's one of them. But ultimately, it says if the horse is too good to enter this race and there's sufficient demand, which we definitely are getting sufficient demand again, then someone's going to claim it. So it's not about how do we balance a race based on the number of pounds a horse carries or what age the horse is or even what gender the horse is. Now, I would think that making fillies able to run in claimers would be nice. I've been saying that for months. But absent that, it's the most balanced race type. And the only thing the team had to do to balance it was say, if you enter a horse here, it can be claimed for the stated amount. So let's look at the schedule here a little bit because I'm self-conscious about my weight. So me being full screen isn't helpful for anybody. If you go to the racing page, and so all I did, you could start at the home page if you'd like. There's a few good things there. Go check out the upcoming series or the lobbies for the majors and undercard. Go bet on those races. That's probably the second best way to get exposure to the game. The first is unequivocally claimers. So if you click the races tab, you go to filters, go to add filter. Now you can do claiming only, no claiming, or you could do race type, claimers, maiden claimers. Either way, it gets you to the same spot. And then what you've got here is similar structure to any other filter. What's racing soon? The selection window open is what can possibly still be claimed. And then open for entry obviously means open for entry. Once the 16-minute clock runs out, it'll lock the race, and then it'll be open for claiming for a period of, I think, an hour and 50 minutes. So you do have to pay a little bit of attention. That's a little bit of the downside to trying to get good at the game through claimers. But if we look at one, and we'll go to one that we have a horse in here. So claim period ends in 39 minutes, 125K claimer. What this means is the entry fee was 3,100 Derby. Is that $40? Just short of $40 if you want to do USDC equivalent. And those horses will each get 6.6 crown. We'll talk about that as well. Purse is split pro rata the way all of the race lobbies are. And the claiming price is the amount that someone could purchase any of these horses for. So this, in the next 38 minutes, if someone put 125K, which is what, $1,500 plus 5%, and said, I want to place a claim on Lucky Lollipop. It's 5 starts. It's won once, got third once. It's got a trailing fleet figure of 64. You would click place a claim. I got to make sure I stop short of doing this. Maybe Mr. B will give my money back. So yeah, you'd click place a claim, and then the next button you hit would actually place that claim there, and you'd have to have 131.20 or 250 in there. So I said the stated claim price is 125K. Add 5% for a transaction fee, and the amount you would put in is 131,250. If you don't win the claim, if multiple people claim this and you got beat out by multiple stables, you would get every Derby back, including the transaction fee that you'd paid. So there's really no risk in claiming a horse from a monetary standpoint. It's not you put in $100 and you only get 90 back if you don't win the claim. There is obviously some risk in claiming a horse and getting your money back. If I were to claim Lucky Lollipop for let's use $1,500 for some simplicity terms. If I claim it for $1,500, I would need to figure out myself, how do I make more than $1,500 from that horse? Now, what make more from that means can be different for everybody. This is a colt, which means if I wanted to use this horse for breeding, that could be an avenue to make money back. If you breed with your own colt, you pay 20% of the list price. If you put this stud in the stud barn for $50 USDC, you would pay $10 to breed with it. That means you're saving $40 every time you use that colt internally. Now, does it have any breeding prospects? You'd have to go to the horse's bloodline page and probably try to discern that. So this is a right turf fur S horse, not the best fleet figure, admittedly, but it does not have any of the traditional one-of-ones that exist at RTF. So those at RTF are Astro, which is 9922, and Scuba, which is 9923. One looks like an astronaut, the other one looks like a scuba diver. This is jockey at the track, looks like a jockey, looks like he's at the track. That's 9925. It normally exists at RTS, which this horse was. So this horse is an S colt. It is only 2 years old. It has won before, and it doesn't have any one-of-ones that exist at RTF normally. That's actually somewhat appealing. Now you would have to juxtapose that with what's available in the breeding barn, and what I'm saying is this $40 discount you're getting or 80% discount you're getting is only applicable if you can use it yourself. So if you go to the race history, I know other people like the fleet figure tab. I still use this because I'm a boomer. It's raced 5 times. There's some fleet figures that don't suck here. 68. So if I think there's a good fleet figure, the next thing I'm checking is it yielding, because yielding tends to have what I'll consider a juiced or a hot time or hot fleet figure. So this is good. So I'm not going to throw it out like I would with yielding. This is right turf good. So another one I wouldn't necessarily throw out. What do these both have in common? One's 12 furlongs, one's 11 furlongs. We tend to consider 10 to 12 furlongs as your marathoner or your stayer type horse. And then somewhat importantly to me is this horse also ran at 5 and only ran a 55 fleet figure. Now, why would a bad fleet figure matter? It would matter because if I see a horse that runs a good fleet figure at a marathon or stayer distance and a bad fleet figure in a sprint, and none of which are yielding, obviously temper is a component here, and I could have just had a bad race. But if I see that, then to me, it more or less confirms the horse is a long distance horse. This is somewhat representative of the horse's potential at its current age. Horses are getting better as they age. So if this ran a 68 at 12 furlongs on the 22nd, 2 days ago, as a 2-year-old, if we fast forward 28 days from then, it'll be a 3-year-old. And I would expect something that maybe runs a 68 to run, 71 to 73, somewhere along those lines, until it gets to its peak age. So fleet figures do have to be considered based on the age of any given horse, knowing that they should improve as you get to 3 and likely as well as you get to 4. 5 still can be quite good, and then 6, I would definitely expect those numbers to start regressing. But the other important factor there is that the horse's age represents its useful life as well. So this is the first season this horse could race. It's only raced 5 times before this race. And if I wanted to retire this horse to breed at the end of the season, I could, because it'd be 3-year-old, so I could use it with my fillies immediately. Or if I wanted to race, and I wanted to race the qualifying series for the Right Turf Major next season, because this is a long distance horse. The major for the long distance one's 10 furlongs. That doesn't seem like that would be too out of reach from a distance preference standpoint. Quality of the horse is a different question. But I could race this through 3. I could race it through 4. I could race it through 5. And then I said at 6, it starts to fall off. Conversely, if you were to claim a horse that's 4-year-old now, maybe it actually ran like a 75 as a 4-year-old. Maybe it ran a 77 as a 4-year-old. But realistically, I can maybe bank on that 5-year-old season of racing that horse, and then it's going to fall off. So I only have a season and a half left, even if the fleet figure, maybe even the horse itself is better. Whereas here I have the rest of the 2-year-old season, can race or breed, the 3-year-old season, the 4-year-old season, and the 5-year-old season if I'm racing. I'm not saying claim this horse. I'm not saying don't claim this horse, but you have to look at all of those factors. 1, gender. Don't enter fillies and claimers until they make it appealing enough to. 2, I'll say second most important, age. 3, I guess global grade. 4, relative performance. So again, the 64 fleet figure. But as we just said, this horse only ran 5 times. And if I'm saying this 55 is good, this is good for how I'm evaluating this horse. 1, the 55 is being pulled into that 64 score. This horse realistically at 10 and 11 furlongs, 11 and 12 furlongs, is really closer to like a 66. You'd take 68, you'd take 67 or 66. I guess you add in the 62, and you would average those out, and yeah, you'd get 65, 64, something like that. I'm not a math guy. Someone can certainly do that work for me. But we focused a lot on one horse, and there's 33 minutes or whatever left, 30 minutes. Let's look through the other ones. Another thing I like, and I know other people don't like them, is I do like morning line odds, which is represented with the or the value times. If there's betting in the race, the actual live odds will be presented where this X is. So when I say I like odds, I'm saying I like the morning line odds that remain unchanged as opposed to whatever the live odds would be. And odds isn't a be-all, end-all. It's a function of global grade. If there's an S plus in here, the law of averages would say the S plus is going to have better odds, even if I don't think the S plus is the best horse in the race. It's just the global grade is a factor in the morning line odds. But I do think the morning line odds do a pretty good job of representing what the horse's peak performance would be at its peak age. Now, if this horse peaks at 6.9 years old because it's got Jupiter blood in it, the morning line odds aren't going to help you. That horse isn't going to peak until the horse peaks. But it being the morning line favorite, I'm more or less saying that, at 4.5 years old, I do think this horse is a better horse than this horse. That I do believe. Not everybody believes that. So balance out everything I'm saying with other opinions. You could obviously pull in what preferences are and how much they matter. It looks like Lucky Lollipop has got, I guess, the same total number of preferences. And then I don't know who this stable is, but we've got another S in here. Again, pulling 4.1 on the morning line. So here you can say, when I said if an S plus was in the race, it would more often than not have better odds than an S. Here's an example of an S minus that actually has better odds than an S, which I think does mean that this horse is probably reasonably good. If I was going to handicap this race, I would say it's probably too short of a distance for Lucky Lollipop to win this specific race. Again, that doesn't mean you should or shouldn't claim the horse. If we went into this one, it seems like this horse has got pretty good results as a 2-year-old already. It's got a better trailing fleet figure than any of the S's in the race, and it has better odds than the other S minus, however slightly. So let's pull those up here quick. Let's see if I ran our horse wrong. Probably did. I tend to run things wrong. Here's another example, pretty similar to Mr. B's horse. In fact, I'd run this in sprints 3 times as opposed to once. Mr. B's smarter than me. He's better than me. He only needed to run it in a sprint once to know that that was the way to do it. So we ran 5 and a 58. It's not yielding, so I'd say that's representative of what the horse can do. It actually ran a 60 on fast, which is maybe why I went back to it. I think maidens can be tricky with fleet figures as well. They definitely used to be in betas. I don't run maidens enough to know, but now we're starting to use them a little bit. And then a 4 in yielding. I'd say normally throw a yielding out, but it's a 50. When I say throw a yielding out, I mean throw it out because it's too good of a number, which actually makes me think that this number would have been worse if it wasn't yielding. And then we run 10, get fast, and then 66. So on the longer distance ones, we had a bad one here right away, and then the last race wasn't so bad. So, I mean, I don't love this horse. I think Mr. B's is probably a better horse. This has one of the one-of-ones that normally exist at RTF, so it makes it less likely to have breeding value. It's got one of the ones that exists at RTS. So I think there's some very limited breeding prospects. It has 0 podiums in 6 races. Not a great fleet figure. We'll see what happens. I'll probably be streaming for like 6 hours, so we'll definitely know what the result of the race was before we wrap up. But then to get to the other 2 horses, and we'll get caught up in chat here a little bit. So you've got Mr. Fred from Pension Plan here. He's got a couple good numbers in here, but they are both yielding. On 10, it ran 73, and 12, it ran a 72. Again, like I said, I don't like to use ones on yielding, and that's both of them. But, I mean, you have to use something. So even if you took, say, yielding juices the number by 2 maybe, then just call this a 71 and a 70. That's still better than the other horses in the race. And then it did run 11 again with bad results, but it did it on sloppy, which is off preference for this horse. So if that was on good or fast, I would expect 67 at worst, probably. Another one that ran a sprint just to make sure it wasn't a sprinter, it was a 57. So seems like this horse is a 9 to 11 furlong horse. It's won a couple times, including winning at or getting second in 150K claimer. What a horse has done at previous claim thresholds matters, but it's not a be-all, end-all. If anything, it kind of gives you a clue of where you can expect to continue to race this horse. So this horse had 2 bad results, didn't get claimed in the 75K. Then it has a really good performance in 83K. And he did what I would have done in all likelihood. I probably would have just ran up a higher number in claimers. Instead of running 83, maybe I run 150. He actually went to stakes with it, and he won there. Gets first out of 12, doesn't run the greatest fleet figure, and then puts it back into claimers at that amount. If I ran 73 at 10 at 83K, yeah, the next time is probably no less than 125K. And these thresholds, like I said, is you can build off each other. So if it didn't get claimed in an 83K and it did well, one, you go up because it did well. But here, it didn't get claimed in 150K and it did well, which means maybe you can come down from the 150K. You're trying to race you're min-maxing. You're trying to race at the claim amount that is the highest without losing your horse, unless your objective is to lose your horse. But even then, you would still want to min-max it a little bit. So he did exactly what I would have done. It was too good for 83 potentially. It didn't win at 150K, and it also didn't get claimed. So you can actually come down from there. Now it's in 125K. I don't think I would claim that horse. But I think that horse probably wins over the two S's. And then the other S minus we've got here, it's got 171 at 10, but again, yielding. So maybe take 2 points off there and call it a 69. It ran a 67 at 12 and actually 68 at 8. So 4 furlongs apart, with 10 being directly in the middle of those 4 furlongs. Maybe this can run a 70 at 10 furlongs. Pretty poor performance in the last two, only running 61 and 64 at 8 and 9. But looks like maybe potentially a bad temper horse that is capable of a good run or two, but maybe ultimately not great. So I think Mr. Fred's going to win this race. If anybody wants to bet, again, don't single side bet into a pool if there's no, or I guess we can't even bet on these races anymore. Never mind. So shows you how much I bet. Because betting and picking in the state of Minnesota is prohibited. So let's get caught up on chat here. Sorry, it's easier when you got a co-pilot, but I actually thought this was a subject I might know enough about to teach myself. See what we got. Don't enter with your foundation horse. Yeah, potentially. I mean, if anybody's lost good fillies and claimers that were unintentional, it was us, and we're not looking for sympathy from anybody. This one I agree with. If I claim your horse and it was a mistake and you and I can work out that it was a mistake, you can tell me why. I mean, I don't need more horses. Everybody knows that. But let's talk about it. Don't rage all night on Twitter when I'm getting like 2 hours of sleep because I just didn't see it. And then it just kind of makes everybody look bad. Yeah, I see your comment, Crypto Hog, about prior race entry for that horse. I'm not going to share it here, but it is what it is. No go for gear today. They probably play today. Actually, the Twins are playing like in 15 minutes against the Pirates, and then the Wolves need to get back in the win column tonight against Brooklyn after losing a fairly close one to Milwaukee last night. I think the Wolves are good. I think they're good, but then they're going to find a way to let us down in typical Minnesota sports fashion. So, yes, poker player. I did get a cheap shot in fairly early. Yep. And I didn't have to identify the other one, but wait. Do I not understand the context of this? Did I give the horse back to DR21? That would actually make me pretty pissed myself. Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, you almost gave me a heart attack. Got a question in here before we move on. In your estimation, are any of the preferences weighted heavier than the others? Weighted heavier? I don't think so. Preferences are weird, though, in that the easiest preference to have was left or right. So even if left or right was stronger, if everybody has it, if it's stronger, does it matter very much, or does that get kind of distilled down because everybody has it? The next was dirt or turf. And then again, it was maybe harder than left or right, but barely harder than left or right. So if everybody has it, does it stand out if you don't have it? And then the third, which was actually really hard to get, the Matches Mafia can explain how hard it was to get and why their horses deserve to be buffed, was firm or soft. I think all of the preferences matter. You wouldn't want to lose one over any of the other ones. I'm guessing they're fairly balanced between is left better than having soft or firm. but the horses that tend to have more preferences than other have those additional preferences at firm or soft. The problem with that is you're reliant on it not being monsoon season. And, I don't know exactly where all these tracks are located, like, because I'm not paying attention when I'm entering these races, but it seems like monsoon season's been like 3 or 4 seasons in a row now. So I guess that comes with the territory with global warming. It's going to be 62 in Minnesota on Monday, but if I have to deal with rain on every virtual horse racing track, I guess we should stop global warming then, because I would like to not have to deal with rain on every PFL track at all times. But you want preferences. I think preferences matter. I just don't know that one of the three is more important than the other. And I think if you have like a critical mass of, say, 5 preferences, that's probably enough, maybe even 4.5. I think if you have 4 or less, it's really tough to expect that horse to win anything. Another thing the team had said previously about preferences, and we haven't asked them about it since in a long time, was that I think similar to weight as well, but it was actually initially expressed with preferences, is that the longer the race, the more preferences had an impact on that race, which makes sense intuitively. If you have to carry 60 pounds around like me every day and you walk 10 miles, you can really feel that extra 60 pounds as opposed to if you only walk 2 miles. But where people were trying to figure out if there was anything unsaid or unwritten in that is, if you do 12 furlong race, that's a 2-turn race, maybe even 3 turns, I don't know, it's at least 2-turn race, versus a 4 furlong race, which is basically a 1-turn race. Does left or right matter less in a 4 furlong race than it does in a 12 furlong race? I don't think the team has ever said anything about that. To me, I would doubt it if I'm saying I don't think the preferences are any more or less important than the other. But I guess it's something that's theoretically possible. Yeah. I mean, I know Bryce is probably getting a well-earned vacation, but in the super off chance that Richie's real, we probably should pivot to choosing the forecast and randomizing the actual weather result behind it, because I just cannot believe that the forecasts represent the equal distribution of outcomes across all the archetypes. Again, if you tell me that of the race lobbies, there's 9,000 races and 20% of them give you a forecast of 0% and 20% give you a forecast of 20% and 20% give you a forecast of 40%, I'm inclined to believe you. But if all of the graded stakes that are at 10 to 12 furlongs are 80%, then it doesn't matter if the global forecast is balanced. It's what the individual archetypes have to deal with that clearly is not balanced. Do you have a Derby contender this season? We've got a sprint contender, and we sold a definite sprint contender. He almost named it something that I would name it. It was almost believable. Like, normally our horse names are worse than this. But yeah, Uranus out of Ted Racing is one of the 2 S pluses we've sold, both of which were bought by Ted. I think this horse is quite good. So selling that sucks a little bit. Best trailing fleet figure, again, Pocono's got 2 killers in here, with including the morning line odd favorite of Click Click Boom at trailing fleet figure of 77, morning line odds of 9.65. Uranus, if I can find it, pulling back to the last stream about not being able to find my anus. Go check that replay out if that's a random comment. Why can I not see the horse now? It's like it's not in the lobby. What am I missing? There's another S plus in here. Oh, it's expanded. So morning line odds of 10. So Click Click Boom actually has better morning line odds, but I think Uranus is probably going to be my pick for the race. Probably because it would just be like, for people that keep receipts, it would be all too funny if Absolute Horsepower sold a major winner, right? So if we want to play the narrative game, it's possible. It's also got an 86 at 4 furlongs, an 82 at 6. Let me get back to the other screen here. Try to get that. I don't know why it's not letting me get the comment off. Come on, where's my mouse? Okay. So we're gonna run at 5. Let's try this fleet figure tab. I never use it. 5. So it is probably better for a furlong horse. It's still a pretty good horse. And it's one we made starting with an A+. So that's always feels good. We owned every horse in the equation, both of the sires, obviously both of the fillies. We have all pieces. We've actually recreated it. Not the S+ aspect of it, but we ran back the breed a couple times. Yeah, it actually seems like it's pretty good. So we got Saturn's Keeper, and then the 1-year-old should more or less be the same, I think. But yeah, filly with pretty good fleet figures for a 2-year-old at least. 77, again yielding, so take 2 points off probably. But I think this horse could be quite good next year. 28 days from today, I think this horse is going to have a chance. So yeah, I think Uranus is probably my pick. Let's go back to it. We do have 2 win. Again, both starting from A+ bloodlines. So we're finally starting to see people starting with A+ and make them major contenders. Because I think I don't want to miss anybody's horse. This one might be pretty good, the 14. Eddie's definitely got 2 in here. Maybe the 14. I don't know that I feel that great about it. Morning light odds aren't that great for being an S+, but the trailing fleet figure of 77 is good. I'm not going to look at the distance preference. This is supposed to be a claiming stream. You can't claim any of these if you wanted to. But yeah, we've got Rings of Ruby with a trailing of 76, morning line odds of 12, again for an S versus 13 for an S+. And then we've got Saturn Grace, which we'll pull up just to show that it's an inbreed. So we're representing the people that like to sleep with their sister in the major. I don't have a sister, so I can use that joke. Ruby, which was used to make Not For Sale, which is the only, or at least was the only non-1-of-1 SLTS colt, which, by the way, I think we are actually going to open up to kind of public use this season. So we'll figure out a price or a pricing strategy. It's possible that we say, like, if you use an A filly or lower, you get one price. It'd be like the only time I ever market a colt for someone to use, but I think that's going to happen. So this horse has actually been pretty good. We've got one or two gaudy fleet figures in there. Yeah, the 81 at 4. 5 might be too long a distance, but the last 2 times it ran, or last time it ran 5, it ran at 78, and it ran a 78 at 7, I guess, too. So cautiously optimistic to hit the board with that one. And then, yeah, we've got an inbreed here, using the ticket window a little too many times there in the first breed. But then the next generation in, take an S- to an S and get a horse that doesn't suck. This one raced in claimers fairly aggressively, partially because it was an inbred and didn't have concerns about anybody taking it. And then really hasn't run anything crazy. We've got 183 in here, but that's a 4 and it's unyielding. So it's probably not good enough for the race today. But yeah, give me a superfecta box of Rings of Ruby, Cowboy Up, Click Click Boom, and Uranus. There, you heard it here. Superfecta box. Someone make a site so we can do it. But all right, let's get back to chat and then we can get back to claimers. Yes, similarly, if you just believe Crown is $10, then therefore it is $10. Yeah, you know, shout out to Ryan Yusefi. He probably actually has to watch this to make sure I'm on my best behavior because Bryce actually is on vacation. And he managed over like the 2 hours that me and Sour streamed to find like 30 seconds where I didn't say anything, which is one super hard to do even with a guest. And he found a clip to make us look good, and by us I mean makes ours look good. So it is what it is. But I thought he was going to clip the Uranus part, or my anus part. Didn't happen. Didn't happen. Okay, so we talked about, is the race run yet? Probably has. No, we still got 10 minutes left in the claim period. So we talked about all the aspects of this race. We ran through 4 of the 5 horses. I more or less tried to convince you that the best 2 assets were probably the 2 S's. Again, at the claim situation, you're considering what's the asset itself worth, as opposed to will it win this particular race. I thought for the race itself, Mr. Fred's probably going to win the race. Ultimately, I'm not going to claim any of them for 125K claimer, but like I said with Mr. Fred, the claim amount is dynamic. It depends upon demand. It depends upon the price of crown. It depends upon marketplace activity. So when he ran a really good race at 83, even if it was juiced slightly, he stepped it up to 150K, and then it didn't win there. It ran good enough, so now he's coming down to 125K. We talked about how this is a juvenile claimer and that you have the rest of the 2-year-old season. You could race a breed 3, and then if you race, you can race realistically through 5. But at every step of the way, including within a season, that asset is worth less every day that goes by. So what I will race in what is this 125K claimer today? Let's see if I did it right with this horse. I was pretty sure this horse wasn't good from the start, but let's see if we did it. It probably only raced claimers. So we got a couple mains in here. Okay, this is actually what I thought it should look like. So I said I've got an unraced 2-year-old S colt. Comes from an S and an S. I actually probably would have thought that that'd been a pretty good asset, right? Chances are, if you get to S with an S and an A, it doesn't mean it's not a great asset, but racing-wise, those tend to not have been as good historically. There are isolated cases where they certainly can be, but I should have thought with the starting product, unraced, this horse is fairly good. Now, a lot of people, if they had this asset, they would probably go to either maidens, because you can, right? Why not race a maiden? Because you can. Or they would have went to graded stakes with it because it's an S from an S and an S. There's not too many S pluses at RTF. Maybe it's actually one of the best horses as a 2-year-old. Total logical moves to take. Why I don't normally race maidens, and we did eventually once it had 3 really bad performances, is that we also have a fuck ton of fillies. And if I need to race my fillies in the sparsely populated collection of races that are maidens or allowances, that means if I don't want to have 3 horses in every race, I have to race my colts somewhere else. Ergo, we race in claimers. And when I talked about the progression of the other horse, Mr. Fred or whatever it was, from 83 to 150K in claimers, you'll see the opposite true here, but also explainable. It's the first day of the 2-year-old season. This asset's never going to be more valuable than it is that day in all likelihood, unless it runs like a 85 fleet figure, then maybe obviously it's more valuable. Instead, it ran the opposite. The horse is just dyslexic. That's the issue here. It should have been an 85. It was a 58. Fuck. But we started in 225. Again, relatively low risk. Anything's going to get claimed there. We can talk about what the top claim amount should be. We could talk about what the entry fee versus the claim amount ratio type situation should be. We can talk about how much crown is going to claimers. All those things we can talk about today. But what you need to know is, one, I tried to discover my distance preference. I started at 10, then I went to 5, then I went to 7. It sucked at all of them. So I went to maidens, and then I'm still trying to figure out distance preference for the horse. But at every step, I got progressively more aggressive with the horse because two things were happening. Time was passing, meaning the horse is less valuable because it's closer to its end of life, even if it's still very young. And two, I'm learning the horse just really isn't that good. So if I was being conservative here, I'm being less conservative because it had a bad result and it's a day older. And then I'm being less conservative because it had a bad result and it's a day older. Getting down to 150K and then probably raced 175 because it was a good lobby. Like, it's not going to be perfectly linear because I'm forced to choose between some not great options from time to time on the schedule. And then we're down to 125K claimer here. If it doesn't get claimed here and it doesn't produce here, maybe I try 100K. Maybe I go to 90. Maybe I go to 83. Maybe I go to 75. But you get that progression until the horse, one, actually has some win equity, and two, gets closer to being claimed if that's your objective. Like I said, I'm trying to min max. I would like to race a horse as long as I can through the 2 and 3 year old seasons without it getting claimed, but actually race it profitably. Not profitably because of Crown Derby, profitably. Let's see what we got. Are there flea flinger ranges to look for depending on the grade of the horse, or is it the same base range? Tom, no, you didn't miss anything good, obviously. This is where, and I think we touched on this in the Sour stream, and this is maybe the most important part for a new player that we've gotten to as we've been streaming 46 minutes and finally worked the newbies into it. But whatever, I like all the OGs. You have to pick a subset. There's no way you can monitor it all. Mr. B is the only person that has enough time to monitor every race entry. And that's why he gets the version 3 of every race in a 4-horse race with all of his horses. For the rest of us, we have to stay in our lane. Our lane for us means we run 3 distinct archetypes. We run right turf firm, we run left turf soft, we run left dirt firm. As of now, starting new this season, I run colts in all 3. He who shall not be named runs fillies in all 3. Maybe eventually named. Maybe eventually joins in stream. Who knows? That would be wild. But the point is, I only have so much attention span, and I can only be as good at as I have time permitting to be. So if I was brand new, I would just watch claimers for a little bit. I'd maybe learn about what archetype I should want to be in. Do you want to be in RDF because it has the most possible horses, which in theory means it has the cheapest horses for the relative quality of the horse? Do you want to be an LTS because it had the least high grade fillies to start with, and therefore something you get at the A+ level can actually get to the S level? We just walked through 3 horses in the left turf sprint major that started from an A+. Do you want to be at right turf firm, which really had a tricky stat array to start with? They all had good speed, or they all had good start, they all had good stamina. They didn't have speed. Do you want to be at left dirt firm, where basically everything prefers to sprint unless you've got scuba, which prefers to run longer distances? All of these archetypes have different market dynamics, and they have different things you need to understand about the archetype. If I find a long distance horse at LDF, that is more valuable than finding a sprinter at LDF, all things equal, because if most things like to sprint at LDF, I'm separating myself just based on the number of horses in my more or less cohort by choosing a longer distance at LDF. And when I made the RDF comment about having the most possible horses, which in theory means it has the most affordable horses, in some cases that's true. At the top end, it's not true at all. But what is good in a 50K claimer or 75K claimer at RDF, let's say 10 furlongs RDF, what's good in a 50K and a 75K claimer at RDF, 10 furlongs, probably wins at 10 furlongs LDF for 150K. Because there's just so many more horses at RDF. And like I said, LDF prefers to sprint. So if you found one that preferred to run 10 furlongs, it's probably actually a really good asset. So for someone new, maybe you can monitor 2 archetypes. I don't think you need to. The only reason we're in 3 archetypes is we have too many horses for each of the 3 archetypes. If we had a third of the horses we did, maybe we would only focus on one of the archetypes. So if you're brand new, you're not working with anybody's, probably try to find one archetype to monitor and then actually monitor it. So if we go to and you don't have to do it daily. You're not going to miss anything daily, but you could wait a week. Like if I was starting today, February 24th, we've got basically 2 weeks left in the season. My actual advice, like if you wanted to have the best financial outcome for yourself, this is not financial advice, but if you wanted to do this, I think this is going to give you the best chance potentially. Still not financial advice. Is just watch the rest of the season, because then you can understand all the dynamics at play. We're halfway through the season. That means people should be more aggressive in where they're entering claimers, because a horse was more valuable as an unraced 2-year-old than it is now at, let's call it 2.5 years old. And next week it'll be 2.75 years old. Therefore, it is less valuable. So you can kind of see that decay in price action, and you can begin to understand what should race in a 50K claimer at right dirt firm, if that's where you focus, or what should race in a 75K or 75K claimer at left dirt firm, so that when you know what should race in those races, then when you see something that shouldn't race in those races, and I'm not just talking fillies, when you see something that shouldn't race in those races, then you know it's actually a good claim. Uh, 100%. Okay. Bryce is out, but this is one that is important. It doesn't show, and it probably should. So if I go to my stable and I go to stable stats, and I go to one, if you go to season 12 right away, it doesn't work. It shows that we have horse sales of $10,000. But if I go to stable financials and I download the CSV, you probably didn't need to see all of this, but I actually did this morning, so we can just run it back. It's not gonna let me. Let's do the one from this morning. Okay, so be accountable for your own results. That means monitoring them financially. If I downloaded my CSV, which everybody has access to if you have a stable, and I filtered for horses claimed, the season started February 11th. That means we had, and this is not an "oh good for us" comment, it's just that this is activity that's not reflected on the stats page, and should be. So we have 18K in sales, almost 19K in sales, but if you go to stable stats, that's not anywhere. The sales that show up in season 10 when it actually season 12 when it actually shows season 12 are actual horse sales. It doesn't show claims. So the team should add horses you've claimed here. We actually have claimed horses, and then horses you've lost in claimers here to actually have a better financial picture. But as you can see, again, we're a weird stable to monitor, but there's some money to be made in claimers, and I'm talking racing them too, but especially if you get some stuff claimed. So let's go back into it. Let's see. So if we're going to go to, and another thing for Bryce when he gets back from vacation, God, he's going to wish he never left. It's one of those things you leave and you come back and you got way more work to do than you had to do before. If we can filter by claims, which we can, we should be able to filter by claiming ranges too. So if I want to filter for like 50 to 75K claimers only, then I could see that as opposed to seeing 200K right next to 83K, right next to 20K. Like these are 3 different things. Like if I'm telling you to find your lane and know what should race in the 75K claimer, then that means you don't need to know what races in a 200K claimer, and that means you don't need to know what races in a 20K claimer. If you're looking for the 70 or the 50 to 75K, yeah, maybe you would want to monitor the two of these two. The difference is one is left dirt and one is right dirt. I wouldn't do both. We can look at these. I bet you, I have not looked at these. I bet you the horses on paper in the right dirt one are better horses, and the claim amount is 23K less. It just almost has to be. Yeah. So in the left dirt one, 8 furlongs, 83K, just over $1,000. We don't have a single horse. Are these both juveniles or neither juvenile? That would be important as well, because what age is an important factor. We talked about that. But we don't have a single S here. Now they all are S minuses. Oh, it's not a juvenile race either. So then on the right screen, we've got the right dirt one, and it's a 60K claimer, so $750. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 S's. It's for 60K, you can have an S at right dirt. For 83K, no one's giving you your S at left dirt, and these are not juveniles. So we've got a horse that's 4, a horse that's 3, 5, 4, 3, and 5. And then over here, some of these horses might be old. 4 is not old in my opinion. 6 is old. That horse sucks. Sorry, 360 win. Not sorry. That horse is 6. 6 sucks. Same thing. Another one. So he's got 3, all 360 win. 6-year-olds. Basically trying to get rid of them. Poseidon's got a 4-year-old in here. That shouldn't suck. I actually think 4 is the best racing age to own horses based on what we're seeing. Not like where you'll make the most money, because 3-year-olds have the qualifying series and then they have the major, and they have those 3-year-old only races where they're racing against other 3-year-olds. They don't have to worry about a 4-year-old where they have to worry about some 3-year-olds might race against a 4-year-old and beat up on them on occasion, and 5-year-olds can definitely beat up on 4-year-olds. So 3-year-olds get the benefit of having their own races from time to time. But if we think horses peak at 4.5 years old, a 4-year-old is more or less going to be on average be peak racing age. So a 5-year-old, maybe it's slightly past prime. If we're saying we're halfway through the season, maybe it's 5.5. We've been told horses age daily. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. We can see some of the fleet figures over time charts. Maybe we pull them up for these 6 years old. We'll do it for this one. But again, so no one's racing a 2-year-old S in the 60K claimer the same way they would race the 6-year-old. They've lost 4 more years that they'll never get back. It's a less valuable asset. So a juvenile race lobby is going to look different than a non-juvenile race lobby. And that's another thing you need to understand. So if you're focused on that 50 to 75K range, maybe only focus on juveniles, or maybe only focus on 3 or 4-year-old horses, because if it's 5, you probably don't want it anymore. Or maybe that's where you have enough money for, and you think there's enough meat on a bone in a horse that it can still win at 5-year-old, so you're going to claim it. But if we pull up this horse, it's been raced 80 times. That should be a good enough sample size. And we go to fleet figures. Didn't even know this was here like 2 weeks ago. So it doesn't move crazy, but you can kind of see, if you drew a line, you would curve up a little bit, and then you would curve down a little bit. It's hard to see. There's some horses that are probably slightly better examples of it. But there is some slight curve there. But at the same time, like if you looked at it and you did like a zoomed in view, like that's part of it is it's not as useful as it could be, because they're sorry, I just want to get the snipping tool over here. They're giving you too big a view of it. Like if you only looked at this, instead of starting at 0 on the bottom of your chart, then again, what I'm asking for is to expand this, because I don't care about 30 fleet figures, right? There's no reason for this bottom section to be here. So if you kind of zoomed in on, call it 40 to 80, then you'd probably see the curve there. But just trust me that there's likely a curve there. Still not financial advice, but that one's pretty close to financial advice. But the point of this is, what races at 60K for right dirt firm is different than what races at 83K for left dirt firm. You'd maybe have to go to 125K at right dirt, or sorry, left dirt to get a bunch of S's in it. We just looked at that left dirt one. That's probably run now or running now. Live now. There was only 2 S's and 125K claimer at left or right turf. And that's juvenile. Let's see. Do we win? I'm not going to call a race, but I'll just sigh in disbelief when we lose here. Already starting to sigh now. I know this is riveting to watch me watch my horse lose, but what did we say? Mr. Fred's going to win this? I mean, it's not a bad start. Better than Mr. B's start. Now watch him win. Diana drinks rosé. Drank a little too much rosé today, the way it looks. We're joining Mr. B in the back. I'm also not ashamed to admit that, you know, if it's hot as dick out, rosé can actually be pretty refreshing. Just like a mimosa. I'm actually probably a Bloody Mary fan, but I think for streaming purposes, mimosas are better. They're more thirst quenching. Bloody Mary is like breakfast in a glass, which is delicious, but Mr. Fred gonna make me look bad? Mr. Fred, my entire streaming career depends on you winning this race. Is it gonna be enough? It looks like it's going to be enough. Mr. B trying to make it interesting. He's going to win it. Mr. B, fuck. God, that guy wins everything. Mr. Fred's and I'm going to get second? Pouring out for Mr. Fred and us, and, you know, 5th place in a 5-horse race. But that does bring us to probably the next useful point in claimers. So while we have it, crown is given based on as if every possible entrant entered a race. So if 12 horses enter the race, they get the lowest possible amount of crown that would have been awarded at that race. It's 183 regardless of how many entrants in this race. So you'd get what, basically 15 if 12 horses entered. Because only 5 horses entered, you get 36.60. So let's say if crown's a buck, I don't know, is it $1.10? I have no idea. Times 36.60. So if crown's a $1.10, we're getting $40.26 to race in this race. The entry fee for the race is $39.06. So that was literally at the current price of crown, a free entry for anybody. And if there would have been 12 horses in the race, it would not have been a free entry for everybody in the race. So there's 2 factors at play here. One, climbers on average are going to get you a smaller race lobby. Smaller meaning the number of horses in a given race. The only way you get smaller race lobbies is to enter 2 seconds before lock, like Mr. B does. And that's version 3 of the race, and you have to be there waiting for it to happen. Not going to do that. So claimers gives you a better opportunity for that. And 2, I don't know who needs to hear this, how many times they need to hear this. Claimers are easier races. They are. And I'm not saying they're just being farmed. I'm just saying the new people and maybe even some of the experienced people aren't racing claimers when they should be racing claimers, which means what is racing claimers is not as good as it otherwise could be. And there's not as many horses as there otherwise could be. If we looked at, Let's go to my stable. We go to non-registered males, which sounds like a sexual offender thing, right? Filter of non-registered males. That is weird, isn't it? I probably should change that. It should be something different than that. And really what I want is registered males in this case. Let's do racing. I'm going to take the filter off. Can use this one potentially. Use this one potentially, this one potentially. So what I'm trying to find examples of, and I never do any prep work, so you just have to deal with that, is find examples of horses that have raced both graded stakes and claiming races and show that you can run just as bad as you ran in a graded stakes and likely win in claimers. So this is Billy Gold, 4-year-old, pretty good horse. Not going to peak until age 6.9 because Jupiter blood in there and things like that. But it did just run 83 again, yielding, so maybe take 2 off. Maybe it's an 81 at 11 furlongs. Pretty good horse. So it raced before that race quite a few races in a row that would have been graded stakes. So the blue dot tells you it's graded stakes. The teal dot is an indicator of claimers. Gray would be restricted stakes. I don't know. Purples, maidens. I don't know the rest of them all. But this is a horse that in graded stakes, again, looking through these next, 6 races, never ran one race that ran below 74. Otherwise, never ran below 74, including ran a 79 and a 77. That's pretty good, even for 4-year-old. And it never won. Now, I did run an 83. Again, a little hot time maybe there with claiming. But then if we go down to claiming action before that, it ran an 81. That's pretty good. But it's gotten wins, and almost all of its wins in claimers. So how many wins does this horse have? It's got 8 wins. Let's find them. Okay, we got lucky. Restricted stakes on the start. That's the first win. We got 7 more to go. Next win, 125K claimer. Next win, 100K claimer. What also happened in those two? They were 4-horse races, which means we got piles of crown because crown is allocated as if 12 horses entered that race. Only 4 entered it. So we've got 2 of the first 3 wins in claimers. The next one, claimer, 125K claimer. So next win, 225K claimer. So big step up in competition, basically double the lowest threshold it raced at, 125K claimer. Can still win at 225K claimer. Still only 6 horses as opposed to 12. Next win, claimer. Next win, claimer. Next win, claimer. So a horse is pretty good. Realistically, it actually is. I mean, it's capable of running low 80s. Even, was the 81 juice too? Yeah, it was. So call it high 79. 79, 78. It did run 78 on good. Ran a 79 on fast. Not a bad horse. Only one of its 8 wins was in a non-claiming race. And for this stretch where we did race it in graded stakes races, none of the races had less than 6 entrants. So again, early wins, 4, 4, 6, 6. And I said in the graded stakes, never less than 6, 5. And then there was one of 8. So I'm racing against less horses, which means I'm getting more crown. I'm racing against less good horses, which means I have more win equity. So all I need to do is I need to evaluate whether or not my horse is going to get claimed, which means I have to have some sort of understanding of how much the horse is worth. And in some of these horses examples, including this one, how much demand there is for horses at any given time. When I got away with racing this horse and 125K, even 100K claimer. So this was January 7th and January 8th. If I go to coin market cap and I go to crown, 100 or $120. Sorry, I didn't mean to offend Crown. It's been up since I'm streaming, right? We're the reason Crown is going up. But if I go back to historical data, may I want the whole thing. Bear with me. Bueller. Okay, slightly ugly. And it's not as many days as I wanted. I needed the day range. Let's do 1 year. We could probably just find it. Let's do it the old-fashioned way. So the last time we entered this horse, we entered it in 225K claimer. 6 races before that, I raced it in graded stakes because I didn't want to lose the horse. Why didn't I want to lose the horse? Why was I concerned I could potentially lose the horse? Because Crown was much higher in those 6-day period than it was prior to that. So I said the times that I was able to race it in 100 and 125K claimers was January 7th and January 8th. If I go to the chart and I say, what was the price of Crown on January 7th and January 8th? 67 cents. It's probably a little hard to read. And then on the next day, the 8th, 70 cents. So Crown is up 50 cents since then. What does that mean? It means the amount of money that's given out to horses in Crown is a lot more, which means a horse that is a good horse becomes a lot more valuable because it can make a lot more Crown and it can still win races. So we got away with racing it in that period of time between the 7th and the 12th, got 3 wins out of it, got a bunch of Crown because none of those races had more than 6 horses in it. And then you know what? Crown went up, and that's great for everybody, including us. But that meant I chose not to race it in claimers because I was worried about losing it. Now it's midway through the 4-year-old season for this horse, so it's getting close to past peak. You know, at the end of the season, it'll turn 5. I won't want this horse when it's 5. That's me personally. I don't want this horse when it's 5 because I've got dozens of other horses that will be onboarded next season when this horse is 5. Could it still be profitable for someone else as a 5-year-old? Absolutely. It's got Jupiter blood. I make jokes all the time about Jupiter being late peak. That doesn't mean you should claim it. That's not financial advice. I just think that by the time I get rid of this horse, it can still be super useful for other people. We want an example of this. Let's go horses. Maybe the most acute example of this from when we sold the horse. Jesus, it's even gotten breeding fees too. It's just sad. I don't even know how far back to go. I think the moral of the story, you can look it up. You can look at the case study of Thunderstorm yourself. We claimed this horse in a 75K claimer, won a shit ton of money with it for 2 to 3 seasons. It got to basically whatever age it got to, and I said, okay, I don't want to hold this anymore. Doesn't mean it's not valuable for someone. And if you want to look at that case study, you can look at Thunderstorm and see how much Intense Stables made from that horse after they claimed it from us. Not financial advice, but I would say generally speaking, the large stables will move off their inventory in claimers to have a more manageable inventory, which likely means, again, don't even use this for us, use it for other people. It likely means the Mr. B of the world is willing to race a better horse in a claimer than a person with 2 horses is going to be willing to race their horses in claimers. Now, the point of this stream is to tell you, if you're the person with 2 horses, you still probably should be racing in claimers, because you know what? If your horse gets claimed, great. You get a pile of money, and you have that pile of money that you can go claim someone else's horse. I think one thing that we struggle with as a community, particularly a community that comes a lot from the other game, is, wait for it. In the other game, everybody wanted the lottery ticket. want something that had been used. They didn't want something that had been named. Part of that was valid. Part of that was because through different iterations of the breeding algorithm, an unraced horse more or less had somewhat, I know it couldn't be better than the best Z1s, all that stuff, but somewhat unlimited potential. I'm here to tell you that, one, the best horses are nowhere near being bred yet in Photo Finish Live. They will continue to get better over time. I can show a picture of that as well. But two, if you have an S- horse, I can basically tell you that, sorry, bud, the upside of that horse isn't limitless. It could be really good in grade restricted races at S-. It could beat a lot of S's if it was a pure sprinter or a pure marathon or a pure stay or whatever we want to use for that term. Maybe it even beats a couple S pluses there. I would say at this stage of the game, there's no chance an S- is the best pure sprinter or the best pure marathoner, particularly at RDF. But I think that applies to most every other archetype as well. RTF is the only one I would maybe, and LTS are the two I would maybe hold my breath on that statement. But for sure for LDF, for sure for RDF, I think S- have a limited upside. I say that to say it doesn't have limitless potential if you're buying an unraced horse. Why are we buying horses that you can't do anything with for 2 months other than have it rotate in your stable? That was one of those genius inventions that we had. We've got this S plus. I can't do a fucking thing with it other than name it something hideous until the next 2 seasons. Could this horse be great? Could it be the best horse? Well, it is an S plus, so it might actually. When I was giving that example, an S- couldn't be the best horse. An S, maybe an S can be the best horse. We'll see if we've got these 3-year-olds in the major. Like I said, I think Pocono's got an S in there, and we've got an S in there that I wouldn't be surprised if those beat the S pluses. But other than naming rights, and you really should stop us from naming horses hideous names. You really should. That's important for everybody. But otherwise, I'm here to tell you, just learn how good a horse is. Buy it when you know exactly how good it is. Buy it when Mr. B entered it in a 125K claimer because he didn't learn the distance preference yet. And it ended up being like a horse that was obviously good at 125K because it had great morning line odds. And its fleet figures at distance left it open for interpretation of whether or not it would be a good sprinter. Buy a known quantity because that opportunity exists daily in this game. We've had a horse claimed like every day for the last 2 weeks. Not always at the highest levels, but basically every day we're having a horse claimed. Don't buy something that you don't know. If you want to have the upside and buy something you don't know, you want to buy this, fine, but blend it. Have a balanced portfolio of horses of, I can make money with these 5 horses, and then here's my home run swing. I'm going to buy a full of the year of the goat and try to win the right turf major. And again, like 3 seasons, this is a 0-year-old. All right, that was my high horse rant, or at least part 1 high horse rant. Let's see what we got in chat. Who says I'm not an effective marketer? It probably shouldn't have got claimed. I don't think that horse is very good. But what was good about it, and we talked about it, was it didn't have any of the one-on-ones that normally exist at RTF. So it was actually an interesting breeding piece at RTF. If you had a ton of fillies to use with it and you wanted to save 80% of the list price on breeding, for sure, definitely downhill after the music. Hopefully we don't get blackballed by the music people. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, Mr. B is Secretariat. Why he doesn't just go by Secretariat, or why he doesn't just name his stable Mr. B stable? Why didn't he didn't name his burner stable Mr. B stable? I don't know. Mr. B is just destroying the game for everybody. And he gets away with it because we can't figure out, was Mr. B secretary to secretary, Mr. B? He's got us chasing our own tail. Claimers are great. Claimers are great. I don't know how else to say it. It's your best entryway into the game because your downside is so capped. I mean, if you claim a B- in a 225K claimer, your downside's not capped. But in large part, everybody that's racing in them, if they're trying to race as intelligently as possible, they're trying to race a horse in a claiming race that the horse is basically at or just below the value of the claim amount in that given race. If it's won at 5 furlongs twice before and it's racing at 5 furlongs and you think it can continue to win at 5 furlongs, why do you care if you can name the horse or not? You can rename the horse, just pay 100 crown, I think. Let's see what we got upcoming for claiming races. Did we bring this one up? Yeah, we did, didn't we? We did look at that one briefly. I forgot what was in it though. Ours is junk. Okay, so the first one we examined in great detail, was juvenile, which means all the horses were the exact same age. One, that's super beneficial to evaluate horse versus horse. And then two, they're the youngest they'll ever be. They're at the earliest age, meaning they have the most useful life left. Once you get past juvenile, there is like a step up in understanding of when you should claim a horse. I said a couple times already that I think maybe the best age to race a horse is as a 4-year-old. But if you're buying a 4-year-old today, it's more or less 4.5 years old. And then if I'm saying the best is 4, or its best day is almost not, or maybe actually already behind it. So then do you want a 3-year-old? Again, you can't race 2-year-olds in these, if we're calling them mature claimers. It's basically going to be a lot of 3 through 6-year-olds. So again, 3 having the most to look forward to from a racing career, 4 likely being peak now, and 5 being, they can still be fucking great horses, but they're probably past their peak. Or if they're not, they'll be past their peak at any day. So if I'm looking to claim a horse, it would have to be a narrow outcome for me to claim a 5-year-old, or it would have to be a piece that I plan to use for breeding at the end of it. Now, this has got a trailing fleet figure of 75. We talked about that. Mine's a 3-year-old trailing fleet figure of 65. 10 threes, which is our horse. We named and bred that horse because of the stupid blog that you had to hit 310 times to be able to see it, which was dumb. But we use dumb names. Like, dumb names are useful for us. So we named that. It's a good horse. It'll maybe even win this race. I wouldn't claim it. 83K claimer. Again, it probably used to race higher claimers. Let's pull it up. How much time do we got? We should probably do a rundown of the horses. We got 11 minutes. We can get through these. So here's a case where it just ran a 76 too. That is crazy. At an 80. Wow. Sort of disregard that though, because I never have 5-year-old horses, so I never see really good fleet figures. And conversely, we have a butt ton of 2-year-olds, so I see a lot of bad fleet figures. Again, what's good as a 2-year-old is going to be different than what's good at a 5-year-old from a fleet figure standpoint. Also a value standpoint. So this horse recently ran 83K claimer, and then it got away with running a 40K claimer twice in a row, ran a 70 and a 76. Didn't get claimed in either of them. So if it didn't get claimed twice, if I'm a new person and I stumble across this 83K claimer we were looking at, and I pull up this horse and it ran twice at 43K and it ran good, it won one of them, and it didn't get claimed, then if I'm going to the next 83K claimer, I'm sorry, but I don't think the entire community missed 2 once-in-a-lifetime opportunities to claim that horse for 40K, and then somehow it's a good claim at 83K. So by just looking at the race history of the horse, I can cross this one off as something that I would consider claiming. Sorry, 10-3s, I love you. I think it's an Apollo breed potentially. And then whoever named Whopper, that wasn't us. Like, we're capable of some hideous names, but that's not it. So then let's go to, again, let's check morning line odds because I think they're useful. 4.05. So far, that's the best. Not the best overall. So for a horse that's a year younger, again, positive, I can get better morning line odds. Again, I said morning line odds I think are pretty good indicators, but I think they assume the horse is at its peak age. So if we're saying this horse is below it or before its peak age, even better then probably. So let's pull this horse up. Let's look at the race history. So it ran at 50K claimers like 4 days ago. 7 days ago. The 17th. Was that before Crown mooned? What was Crown on the February 17th? It was 71 cents then. Wow, like literally just before it mooned. So this is a person that's fairly intelligently entering this horse because they said they could get away with racing it in 50K when Crown was 71 cents, but now that Crown is 80 or $1.20, they're now racing it in 83 claimers. I like that. I can respect that. So then, even if it wasn't claimed in 50K claimers, does it make more sense to potentially claim it now? I don't know. Let's see if we can find any other examples. One at 275K and 200K. I mean, those were different times. Crown on the 5th and 6th was way lower, 57 cents. So you can basically see that this person is kind of indexing where he's racing at based on the price of Crown. And I think that's smart. I think that's when you're entering a race, that's what you should do. When you're claiming a race, then looking at the race history is only useful if you're kind of trying to figure out, does it make sense by Crown? And I'm not doing a ratio of saying like, if it's a 200K claimer, Crown's got to be X% higher than it was 10 days ago to be able to do it. Someone should do that. If you want to do a tool, like that's a useful tool. Like, what does the claim amount ratio need to be for whatever price Crown is to make a horse that runs a 75 fleet figure claimable? That seems like a useful tool to me. I would use that tool. Probably not though, I'm lazy, but it would be a useful tool. So if I was going to claim one of the two, we get 6 minutes left, I would say for sure cross off 10-3s. Nova God is probably better as a claiming potential situation. Then I just quickly get through the other ones. A 3-year-old with not great odds, not terrible, only 1 win in 27 starts. Again, it's 3, so that's better than a 4-year-old. 67 trailing versus a 71 isn't bad. It's a soft horse. It's running yielding, so maybe he was, I don't remember what the forecast was. It probably was firm based on every other horse being a firm horse in here. You know, it's another one where monsoon season hits and you can't control it. Except for the team can control it and refuses to. Let's find other easy cross-offs. Benjamin Maxwell, the 5-year-old. Again, same argument as 10-3s. 10-3 is probably a better horse. Better trailing fleet figure, 75 versus 68. So let's cross off the 5-year-olds. My Street, my argument of Mr. B or us racing and claimers applies to Monkey Tennis and Wimbledon Turf. If there's anybody that races the most aggressive definitively in claimers, it tends to be Monkey Tennis. I think he puts things price to move in a lot of cases. That's not to say you should claim this horse. I just think there's going to be opportunities to claim horses from Monkey Tennis that'll end up being good claims. I honestly don't think ours is a good claim. I'm not trying to just sneak it through claimers. It's got 6.5 morning line odds compared to 4 for a 5-year-old, compared to 4.7 for a different 3-year-old. So if you just do 3-year-old versus 3-year-old, ours is 6.5. His is 4.72. You don't have to like odds, and they can be meaningful enough to suggest that this horse is demonstrably better than this horse. And then the 4-year-old at 3.7 7. So of the options that we may potentially have, we only got 4 minutes left. You shouldn't wait till the last minute to do these. Probably shouldn't be drinking mimosas to do these either, but ooh, see, I almost clicked the place claim one. That would have been awful for me. Let's pull them up side by side. So I said age matters, global grade matters, trailing fleet figures matter. If you're going to consider for breeding, bloodlines matter. This has got 1 of 1 in it, the Ziggy 9921. This has got 2 1 of 1s in it, but only one of them normally exists at LDF, which is Rocket Cashal. It's actually a soft horse, though. All of this is soft. Bad Attitude, Aphrodite is soft as well. So if you wanted a left dirt soft horse, that would be different than here. When I said focus on a niche and focus closely on a niche, I actually mean like focus on left dirt firm or left dirt soft, not both. Now, if you were a new person and you wanted to do 2, I think it would actually make sense to do complementary ones or ones where you see a lot of the same horses. Because if you're going to get a 40 or 60% forecast, most likely outcome's probably yielding, and you'll see a lot of firm and soft horses in the same race. But I do mean there's 8, if not 24 distinct archetypes. This horse doesn't win, and I do think there's something to be said for that. And this horse does win. It ran a 76 on Good a couple days ago, right? 17th. Yeah, it's just before Crown went out. And then he ran a 72 on Soft, off preference in its last race at 8. Go to chart to see where its finishing position is. Just a really good 8-9 furlong horse. Where are we racing? It's definitely going to win the race. I can only be wrong on 2 races in a row, right? Streak's got to end sometime, right? I don't think this horse is very good. I know that's not hard-hitting analysis, but it hadn't run a 70 since February 6th. And then 71 on the 31st. This is not a very good horse. It's actually probably a longer distance horse. It ran 49 at 4 furlongs. And then at 12, it's probably better. Well, maybe not. Maybe it is a 9 furlong horse. That's where this chart can actually be useful if things jump out. It's just maybe it was a terrible race there, but it is probably a 9 furlong horse. But I just don't think it's good enough to claim. It's definitely not good enough to claim. I don't even know if it's good enough to win. So it's a 3-year-old, that was the advantage, and that is still an advantage of it. You got 1 minute and 45 seconds left. I don't know. It's not a no-brainer claim. The other thing to consider is like the racing schedule itself. So this is a left dirt firm horse. Next week, not this coming week, but the following week is going to be the Kentucky Derby. If this is a 9, which is accompanied by qualifying steers. So if this really is a 9 and 10 furlong horse, that means not this coming week, but the week after that, that horse has the opportunity to not just run the claimers it's running now, not just run S- restricted stakes races, which this horse probably should be running in. And it will have the opportunity to run not just graded stakes, but also qualifiers. And when you introduce qualifiers into a schedule that is otherwise unchanged, meaning it already has grade restricted stakes, it already has graded stakes, it already has claimers, you're saying, I'm just giving you more opportunities, and opportunities at a prestigious or higher level where there's qualifying points and decent buy-ins. That means not this coming week, but the week later, Novigod's actually going to have a pretty easy racing schedule where it can actually, in that week, make pretty good money. I wouldn't claim it. I think it's going to crush this race. I think 83 is just a touch too high for it. If it was in 60K, it's probably a claim. I don't think I'd claim it at 75. 60, I'd probably consider it. 83, no. But now we're going to have to monitor if I badgered someone into it, and then they're going to tweet me on Twitter and be like, oh my God, you convinced me to claim this horse. I want a refund. Can I get it back? Don't do that. Don't do that. All right, we'll leave this one up. No, it won't. You don't think it's going to stomp that field? Who's going to win? Jacked baller. Who's going to win? Tell me. I can't bet it. I can't even profit from it. I just want to know. Oh, it won't run in the Derby. That's fine. Yeah, you don't need to run in the Derby. So to illustrate that point, the point I was trying to make about having a easier racing schedule on the colt side. Oh my God. Too many horses. That was this horse's name with Grace in the name. Ridiculous. Okay. What I meant is this week that culminates tonight is left turf soft, right? Those are the majors. So we have a similarly good, above average S- colt. It happens to be 3. It's a better asset. It's not 4. It's probably a better horse as well. Similarly, it prefers 8, 9, 10 furlongs. So basically, it's like a LTS equivalent of the other horse, except it's 3-year-old instead, maybe a touch better. What I mean by paying attention to the schedule and by paying attention to, I know, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because the 3-year-olds are going to race in the qualifying races, which means there's more opportunities for the 4-year-olds. It doesn't have to enter the races. Here we did. We entered qualifiers as a 3-year-old. But what we also did is there's a sick as fuck race last night or this morning. $450 basically, and there's one S in it. And you know, if I was gonna drop a schedule, which I did, and send it to the team, which I did, I probably wouldn't have $450 left turf graded stakes race within 24 hours of having the left turf sprint major and 24 hours of the left turf distance major. Oh, and I think there's a free roll at left turf that other people were entering as well, but you do you on the schedule, I guess. So what I meant is that horse that I just showed you has no fucking business being in $350 race. But I entered it knowing that, you know what? I bet I can catch a field because every other good horse, whether they're 3 or 4, and in this case we're talking about 3-year-olds, the 3-year-olds are racing the sprint major or the long distance major, the major. And the non-3-year-olds or the 3+ are racing the free roll, which means there's this extra lobby here. So my point was when I was talking about the left dirt firm horse and it having opportunities, even if it is a 4-year-old, it can't run the qualifiers. But if all the 3-year-olds are running the qualifiers, it means they're not running elsewhere. So you get soft spots in the schedule to exploit. I mean, honestly, exploit. This was it's not quite $350, but what is it? 35. So $437.50 is the entry fee. And we got $425 or 425 crown times 1.2. So we made $80 just to enter the race. And I knew with an S- I actually had podium potential. I mean, we only lost by 0.05 seconds. Morning line odds weren't that far off. When I saw the lobby, I actually thought we had a chance to win. We'll take second. We made $80 above the entry fee in crown, and then actually made a couple $100 racing it. So take advantage of the schedule if they're not going to fix it. What do you mean by this? I'm not accusing you of anything. I just don't know what you mean by it. Other questions? Get questions in chat. Again, to do kind of circling back to the common themes and the important points of claimers. Every horse is worth more until it gets to 2-year-old on the day, and then likely less every day after. Now, if it has breeding prospects or it has somehow a crazy outlier racing career, it can be worth more money. I understand those types of situations. But if you follow the kind of bell curve of horse valuation and realize what you should enter your 2-year-old in for claimers should start higher the first day it's 2, and then readjust based on 1, how well it performs, and then 2, the amount of time that's passed since it was 2-year-old, 0.000 years old. If it's a 3-year-old and it can't race in the majors, maybe start racing slightly more aggressively in claimers. Like I said, if I think a 4-year-old is the horse to have for peak age for racing, just for racing, not as an asset, but for racing, 3-year-olds tend to struggle in claimers. That's a real thing. Like there were several seasons in a row that we would try to get rid of horses the last week they were 2, again, because they lose value the second they turn 3, partially because 3-year-olds tend to get beaten up on in claimers versus 4 and 5-year-old, and for sure in open stakes. So this one we're going to change, and we'll probably do something next week. We have a couple, for those that are avid watchers or followers, this crop that'll come to in early March was the where we just couldn't miss, and everything was like an S filly. So we have a lot of those. So I think we will sell some of those, but we intentionally held a bunch of them because for the longest time we were selling stuff when they were 0 and 0 or 0.0 years old. And then whoever's buying that has to wait 2 full months to race it. Like if they only have to wait 2 days to race it, chances are they'll be willing to give you more money. Now there's some risk on both sides of that, right? If you sell something when it's 0.0 years old, you're selling into a known market. You know what the market is that day for age 0 horses, what the market is for a 1.75-year-old horse. Could be up, could be down. In that case, obviously everything went up since then, mostly as a function of Crown, but I think new stables and sentiment and everything has improved as well. So I'm trying to get into a position where for what we sell before it races, we move it closer to when it's racing age as opposed to the second it's born. So if I start doing that now, then it's easier to do next season. But it ultimately ends up being you have to not sell stuff for 2 months or whatever because you have to wait for it to mature. How do the entries of multiple horses by large corporations or stables affect the scheduling and organization of races? I don't think they're listening to us anyways. But I will say how you can take advantage of large stables is kind of what I touched on earlier is if I have, I'll show you. I mean, they got nothing to hide. You can look yourself. If I go to 2-year-olds, we've got 65 2-year-olds racing, just 2-year-olds. Now, if of those, gender, female, 25 of them are females, what I'm going to do, what's in the best interest for me, is I'm going to find races for 25 2-year-olds. But if they're only spread across 3 archetypes and they're mostly all S or S minus, that means chances are if there's a perfect race for every one of them, that would be great. Maybe there is, but there's not much more than that, right? There couldn't possibly be. And that's what I said earlier in the stream is where we race our fillies determines where we race our colts. So if I have some fillies that we can race in graded stakes, we look at the one Saturn's Keeper. Yeah, that can race in graded stakes sprints all day. Some of the other ones can't. And they can race in maidens until they win, and then they can race in benchmark allowances. But if I'm racing fillies and maidens and benchmark allowances and some graded stakes, and I don't want to have 3 horses in a race if I can avoid it, then that means the colts have to race somewhere else. And if I'm not going to race fillies and claimers until they make it incentivized to race fillies and claimers, then that means I'm going to put colts and claimers. And sometimes that means I put good colts and claimers because I don't have another place to race it because I've got a filly in that same race. I'm not asking for you to feel bad for us. I'm explaining why the large stables actually make good horses go in claimers, because if I'm going to race them, I almost have to. Know any blogs or resources to help study some of the bloodlines you mentioned earlier? I mean, most of the stuff I was saying about peak age, like even if I was right, it's anecdotal. I don't know that there's anybody doing convincing review or convincing tools on bloodlines. I would say, I think Sowers maybe is in chat, and if he wants to offer up the tool we reviewed on the stream with him, he can do that. We'll come back to it, F Dog. I'll look at it after the fact. But the tool that he'd outlined with me on stream didn't look like it was going to be a be-all, end-all either. It was going to be a starting point to look for, like, is there an opportunity to breed differently than other people are breeding? You'd still have to do a ton of homework on stuff, but it seems somewhat useful. Let's what do I want to do? Let's go to MJ stuff, and you'll see, the zero marketing ability I have, graphic design, otherwise. We do have a new banner at the bottom of the screen. I fucking hate referral codes. I get them. I understand. They actually work. They're actually useful. But I feel slimy saying, use my referral code to do something. So I did the opposite. I want you to sign up to play Photo Finish. I want you to learn. I want you to be great at Photo Finish Live. I genuinely do. It's better for me if everybody's great at it. But to evidence that is, I want you to play, but I'm not even going to try to profit from you joining the game. Use MJ's or Lacey's referral code, which are scrolling across the banner there, if you would like to join. Even if you catch this later, they both do a better job. Lacey in particular for onboarding new users. I don't know why I would get credit for referring people, even if they see my stream. I'm not the one answering their questions in general chat. Lacey is, David is. And then for MJ, which we're just getting to his tools here, is I'm not building tools, MJ is. I would rather those people benefit from it than us. But I know MJ has one, and I don't know if I'm spoiling it and I'm not supposed to do this. I think I'm supposed to join MJ in on his stream, I think this week, 28th. Yeah. He's got this claiming corral tool. So if you go to mjinformatics.com, I'll drop it in the chat. And it refreshes every 35 minutes, I guess. And it literally tells you like how many claimable fillies exist. That means someone's got in that hour and 50-minute window, someone's got one filly that's literally claimable. And I think there's a way to figure out how to do that. I don't know. Someone's used this tool before and I haven't. Let's try to figure it out together, chat. Let's try to figure it out. Okay, gender, easy enough. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Equals. Female, is that gonna work? Boom, figured it out. Sour Patch. It's an 125K clamor. Let's figure it out. Is it good? 125K clamor, right dirt. Again, more horses at right dirt, more horses at higher level, more horses available at right dirt. Pay attention to a specific archetype. Don't try to do every archetype. If you've paid attention to right dirt for a week, then you're qualified to make this determination. But ultimately, in this case, you're just saying it's a filly. Is a right dirt filly worth more than 125K if it's a A+? So which one was it? Sour Patch? It's a 3-year-old filly. Decent flea figures. So then what you would do is you would go to the marketplace, or you could use Gap Data for this. Gap Data's got tools. MJ's probably got tools for this too. Maybe he'll teach me how to use this stuff on stream. But then you'd filter. In this case, you definitely would want to get right dirt, 100%, because I said right dirt should have more affordability to it. Then you would add in, let's do grade. A plus. I'm even gonna put S minus in there just to see like what the next step up is. And then I would say youngest age is 2. That it's 3 doesn't really matter. It's one less full than a 2-year-old would potentially have available. But at the end of the day, a 2-year-old could be retired and bred just as a 3-year-old could. And then I'm just gonna sort price. Well, I gotta do gender. Thought I did. So the cheapest 2-year-old right dirt filly is $60K. So no, just because someone entered a filly in a claimer does not mean it's an auto claim. Like, this is a better horse. Sour Patch is a better horse than this other one. I can know that without clicking into it too much, that this one raced 7 times and has a fleet figure of 53. The one that's in the race has a fleet figure of 68. It's actually a pretty good number for an A plus, actually. That's the only valuable thing to it. But you could get an S minus for 90K. Now it's got weird preferences, but maybe that means you could take this right dirt firm piece and go to right turf firm with it or something like that. But no, I like the tool in the sense that it told you that there's a filly that's potential to be claimed now. What that saves you is you don't have to go to races and you don't have to filter for claimers and then review every single lobby to try to find the one filly. MJ's tool told you there was one. You just had to add the condition of filter or gender equals female, and then you could click the race ID. The other things I guess you could do in there is like average fleet figure is greater than 75. We got any? Oops. Did that work? No. Let's clear all. Start again. Average fleet figure greater than or equal to, we'll do 76 just to see if we can find any. Hit enter. There's none. So if we do 74. Okay, there's one horse that's an S, again, RDF. Should be more pointable, should be more affordable. Dugal, an S. I don't know if this shows you how old the horse is. Oh, it does, 4. Yeah, as I say, age is like one of the most important considerations no matter what. So from Crush Stables, who's one of the best claimers. Again, following what other people in claimers do, Crush, Poker Player, which is Johnny Park. Why am I blanking on the other guy? Tells you what I really think of him. No, I'm just kidding. Trawlers. A lot of those guys made their hay in claimers. I mean, we make good money in claimers, but for different reasons in a lot of cases. But they're actually claiming horses and then using those horses profitably in racing, and that's how they're making it. We're making it because we just have a lot of horses. We've got the second easiest job in photo finish slide behind Dinga. But yeah, we can look at Dugal. It's our Dugal. 4-year-old with an average fleet figure of 75. Right dirt firm horse. It's an S. Go to fleet figure chart. There you can see some curvature to the over time, but yeah, they just need to get rid of this 40 and below piece. Look at the average by distance. You can clearly see that this is like a 5 to 6 furlong horse, probably 6 on the dot. And then it's in that 75K running 5. So on preference, on distance. I guess if you're real new and you're not familiar with claiming, if you claim the horse in this race, if you claim Dugal in this race, the owner of it now, Crush, gets the results. So if this horse wins this race, it would win 9,000 Derby, which is $112, I think, and 50 cents. He gets that 112. You just get the horse at the end of the race. So you're not claiming it because of the race itself it's in. Then you would just have to evaluate, like, is this horse actually? So when we talk about, trying to min-max race where the horse value is, you would see maybe it would go down over time. It definitely has. It's raced at 225K on 13th. Got down to 175, then 150, then 125, and then now today it's at 75K. Man, people are gonna be mad when I'm outing their horses and claimers on stream. But to show I practice what I preach, I don't know dick about Right Dirt Firm. Like, this seems like a good horse. It's a 4-year-old that morning line odds wise is what, second choice? Second choice. So there's a 7.6 there, but bad preferences. Like, I would take the 7.47 over the 7.6 with the difference in preferences, because morning line odds don't pull in preferences, I don't think. But the only horse with better odds here is AC Express, which that might actually be okay, but the trailing fleet figure there is 70 and this one's 75. So this one's definitely probably more in form, or at least raced better by the owner. I don't know anything about Right Dirt Firm. I know this is the most aggressively he's raced it ever. Ever. It's 4? I don't know. If you know Right Dirt, do some work on it. Maybe that's a decent one. Let's go back to the race that ran. Okay, this is the one we said Nova God was going to crush. If I'm wrong twice, this is my reasoning for never streaming races. Yeah, I think this is Thursday. I don't know how much we're going to use the tools, but it might just be more of a discussion. But I'm up for whatever. Tell MJ what you want to hear. Good to know. You can double tap the gender button on MJ Informatics. You say we a lot. Do you have a partner? Do you manage everything? I have a couple partners. Between two people, myself being one of them, we have like 85% of the ownership. But there are a couple other smaller pieces as well. I had managed literally everything until the start of this season. Now, the start of this season, I'm not racing fillies. They are. And that might be something that potentially lend itself to getting more involved in subsequent seasons. But for me, claimers is the best way to get involved in the game, but claimers require the most understanding of market dynamics. You have to understand what horses are selling for, what horses are listing for. That value curve of a horse is most valuable the second it's 2-year-old, and then every day after that it likely gets less valuable. But how much less valuable? Some of that takes experience, but some of that you have clues for. What's the price of Crown? What has he historically raced this horse in, claiming amount wise? And then how is Crown above or below that since then? There's a lot of things that can help you, but no doubt entering fillies is probably the easiest race to enter. Okay. Thank you for not embarrassing me, Nova God. Did anybody claim it? No. Okay, good on you. Yeah, I didn't think it was a claim either, but it's a good horse. I knew it was going to win. So the question is, was it worth claiming? Then you have to figure out, like, what can this person earn with this horse? Does it have any breeding prospects? Probably not. But it can race the rest of its 4-year-old season profitably. It can probably race the entire 5-year-old season profitably. And what does profitably mean? He put in 2,000 Derby. He takes back 5,400. He also gets 20 Crown. So you can't assume he's going to win a race every time, and you can't assume it's going to be a 6-horse race at 83K every time either. Like, there are variables, but if you just said, like, the ROI on this horse as a 4-year-old is X, and I think I can get 12 more races in while this horse is good, and then maybe it can be claimed by someone else, or maybe it can be sold to someone else, then maybe you can make your money back. I think too many people are trying to solve for, like, my horse is worth 0 when I'm done with it. Unless it's 25 years old, or it's, you know, a goldenrod like B minus, it's not worth 0. So he raced this in 83K claimers that didn't get claimed. If he puts it in a 40K claimer tomorrow, it's going to get claimed. So the horse is worth at least $500. And today alone, he made what, $40 racing it. So how many days do you have to make $40 with its residual value being worth $500? How many days do you have to make $40 to make this horse worth claiming now? I mean, you want to make money when you claim it, absolutely. You just have to figure out what a reasonable ROI is, and realize that residual value, the lowest it's possible worth, is also going down on a daily basis as well. But I thought, I mean, it was an easy win. It's probably got a lot of easy wins the rest of the season. Do we have any more coming up? Oh, we'll watch this one. We're going to get smoked. This How Now Brown Cow. How Now Brown Cow. We didn't get any betting love either. Oh, no, we must have got a little. Must have got just a sprinkle. Baby Steps gets a lot of love. We had 9 minutes. So none of these horses can be claimed. This horse is probably running claimers. You probably could have claimed it. 225K, 175K claimers. Won both of those. Look at that. Here's another example of the easiest races and the smallest races are claimers. So non-claimer, 9 entrants, 2nd place. Non-claimer, 12 entrants, 4th place. Non-claimer, 11 entrants, 10th place. Non-claimer, 12 entrants, 3rd place. I apologize, but I do want to drill a fucking point home. 4 entrants, 1st. 6 entrants, 1st. Non-claimer, 12 entrants, 7th. Look how much more profitable it is to race claimers. Just know your thresholds. If I race this horse on 125K claimer tomorrow, it's going to get claimed. I know that, some learned experience in that. I'm not saying it's super easy, but if you were to review this horse, let's say I put this horse in a 175K claimer tomorrow, you would have a decision to make. It's won at 175K. It's won at 225K claimers. It's run 72, 74 fleet figures, 72 a couple times. It's a 2-year-old, so it's going to get better. Does it have any breeding prospects? It's got 9924, which doesn't exist normally at LDF, and it does have Astra, which does normally exist at LDF. So kind of one of the 101s at LDF, but it prefers to run longer distances. So that's kind of the differentiator between the sprinters at LDF. But it's not beating the best horses. So if it's not beating the best horses, that limits its upside. But if it can race in claimers and not get claimed, could be a good thing as well. It probably won't see claimers again, I don't think. It's got 9.96 morning line odds, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. And I don't think there's a big difference between 9.01 and 9.96. I do think there's a big difference between 7.14 and 9.96. I don't think the morning line odds are mathematical in the sense that that's how many times out of 100. I mean, I'm saying the literal math is not the literal math. But they are more or less a power ranking of horses at their peak running at this distance they're running at, is my opinion. So I said morning line odds probably are juiced a little bit by global grade. So maybe I'm willing to excuse the 2S pluses being favored over us. But then when you have an S that's actually at, is it the lowest one or is it another one? An S at 8.02, like, those are pretty good. 8.02 versus basically 10. Now, that is a meaningful difference between the two. I think if both horses were at their peak age, Celestial Empire, again, it loses a little in preferences, but is probably better. Actually, same total number of preferences, but that's be an interesting one. We got any D-Stables horse in here? No. Anybody in the audience got a horse here? Anybody bet on this race? You can tell me you bet against our horse. I don't really care. We have 5 minutes. Come on, guys. Questions, comments. I'm not going to allow for concerns. There's no limits to how many concerns you would have about me, I'm sure. Oh, I was going to show you breeding up over time. How do I find that fairly quickly? Okay, got a couple minutes. So when I said in this game, the best horses haven't been bred yet, the best opportunities are still ahead of all of us. This is true. Now, our numbers are disgusting, and my legend or key for what this chart is not very helpful because there isn't one. But if I walk through it, again, across the top, you've got global grade of the filly. Then you have going down what crop or if it's Gen 0. So we started with 43 Gen 0 fillies. Oh, good for us. A lot of those were A plus and a lot were A. We only had 2 S fillies. We only had 3 S minus fillies to start with. So when Eddie kicks our teeth in for 6 seasons straight, I have to remind myself I only really gave myself 2 chances, and a lot of times I bred those S fillies with S minuses, and we, until this season, had never bred with an S plus colt before. But you can see over time. So again, this is for breeding this coming window, the one. So this next window, that's a gaudy number, but yeah, we'll have 168 to breed. But you can see where we started with A pluses and A's. The next time we bred with when crop 1s, so this would be what we're 8 years old now. For 8-year-olds, we have 2 S's again, and then 10 S minuses. So what were once A pluses moved to S minuses. What were once A's moved to A pluses. Then the next crop, that's probably 1 month we actually sold a fair bit, or maybe we got unlucky on gender. Again, this is only females. But then crop 3, you can bring on 4 S's instead of 2, 2, 1. Bring on 13 S minuses instead of 3, 10, 13 there. And then only have 4 A pluses and A's. Crop 4, we must have sold a bunch from that as well. But 3 still more than we had in the first couple of seasons of S's being new breeding pieces. So we had all the S's before it in all likelihood and added 3 more S minuses. And then you get to crop 5, 15 fillies added to that pool, 10 of which are at the S minus level, 6, 3 S's, 20 S minuses added. So you can see we only have 1 new A plus added, 1 new A added. So where we started, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically, in 6 seasons, everything that was here is S minus at worst. So that is breeding up over time. That's going to continue. These are just assume that this is 10 stables and not 1 stable, and you can feel better about it. But it does show you like there's an actual progression of horses getting better. We would have had 2 S pluses. Obviously, we sold both to Ted. 1 might win the sprint major tonight, Uranus. But yeah, crop 7 will retire 9 S fillies. So where we'd never had more than 4, now all of a sudden we're bringing in 9, and we're actually bringing in less S minuses because what were once S minuses are now S's breeding. So now what was cool because it was an S is less cool because of these. A couple of them should be S pluses next time. So that was just breeding up over time. That wasn't us trying to brag. All right, I'm allowing for questions, but we will watch this race, and then barring more questions, we'll probably wrap. I'm just checking to make sure I'm not missing anything in Discord. Nothing useful. We can get through these quick before the race, but keep them coming. Keep them coming. What is your favorite horse, and what has been your best racer? Best racer is tough because best at what? Like highest win rate, won majors. Like, what could mean whatever. Like, because Saturn would maybe be our best horse then, which is a Gen 0 LTS colt. No one breeds with it because they breed with Serenity now. But Saturn actually won 2 majors and has bred the S plus that we had, or was in the bloodline for the S plus. We made it LTS from an A plus. So if we go back to that race, let's say what's the sprint? I don't know if it was the sire or the grandsire. We have both. Yeah, so Saturn bred us an S plus from an S and an S. It won 2 majors on the track. And it's been in a lot of our great bloodlines and produced a lot of our best racers. So I would say my favorite horse probably is Saturn. Does it winning 2 majors make it the best as well? I don't know. It retired at 3, so it won as a 2-year-old and it won as a 3-year-old, the majors, back when you could run them as 2-year-olds as well. So yeah, maybe I did answer my own question. And then second question, yeah, Av. I think Apollo, which is the rarer LDF, S Scuba, rarer than Pellener Fields, won as a 2-year-old. So the season before we started calling it the Kentucky Derby, it won. Saturn won 2. We won 3 of the first 5 majors, something absurd like that. And then obviously Soulmates rattle off a bunch. And then we've won a major with an RTF horse we made ourselves. Pretty proud of that one. That would have come through the Mercury bloodline. Let's see if we can find it quick. I don't even know if I remember, but it would have been like a Mercury Juniper breed. I should know. That's bad if you can't even remember the name of a horse that won a major. Let's go Juniper instead. It'll be easier. Again, Juniper starting with an A plus, so an S minus and an A plus made a major winner, and made some good horses. Bobby Boucher's pretty good. Dirty Juniper's pretty good now as a 3-year-old. Juniper Lemon, Juniper Tree, all these are actually pretty good. I'm a big believer that you can see consistency in breeding on the filly side for sure. Maybe it wasn't Juniper though. I don't know. I'd have to find it. We won an S with an S minus, which was a breed of an A plus and an S minus. And that was when bred horses were racing, so it's not like it was some fluke like farming season situation. All right, let's see us get fucking kicked in the teeth here. Can we just get third? I just want to be peaking in the 3-year-old season. Thank you. Yeah, F-Dog, I think we've had horses we've raced in claimers. That horse I think I'm talking about, RS minus, probably raced in claimers. And then, yeah, if Soulmates had one that he claimed and won a major with, we haven't done that yet. But yeah, claimers, the quality of horses that go through claimers are a lot of people just trying to like just steal a pot, like poker. It's a bluff. Like, call me, but don't call me. I'm going to try to do it at 3:00 in the morning and hope no one sees it. That happens a lot. So I love racing a new horse for the first time. I fucking hate naming horses, but I do love racing a new horse for the first time. I understand the value and the appeal of that. But I'm saying if an unraced horse doesn't have limitless potential, unless it's an S or maybe an S plus or maybe an S, if that's the only places you could possibly have limitless potential, then I'm sorry. I would just rather you buy a good horse via claimers. And you know what? If it's an obvious claim, maybe there's going to be 10 people that claim it and you won't get it, but your process was right. Just because you didn't get the horse didn't mean you didn't have the right process. Or you can buy all these unraced horses that you have no idea how good they are, but the downside of buying those, because they're priced with the upside of being an unknown, the downside of buying those is pretty high. If you make a bad claim, but it was an educated claim, your downside is very minimal, in my opinion. Not financial advice, but you got to be smart, but it's so much easier to be smart playing the claimer game than it is playing the buy unraced horses game. Yeah, we're not going to hit the board. mid-pack. Story of my life. $16-1 though. That horse didn't get bet at all then. No one made a bet on that horse and it won. Terralingua. Shout out to, make sure I don't get it wrong, Devo. I think that's another Sowers acolyte. You know, they talk about like the Andy Reid coaching tree in football or the Mike Shanahan coaching tree. Like, I'm starting to think the Sowers coaching tree and Photo Finish Live it's at least got a couple solid branches to it. It might not have the most people, but the Sowers coaching tree is a pretty good coaching tree in PFL. New name unlocked, mid-pack. Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I think I'm creative enough to have some good horse names, but I just, one, have too many that it becomes overbearing. Oh, good for us. And two, because we have so many, it's actually really helpful to name them the way we do, which is some inclusion of the filly and the sire in it, so that I don't have to click, okay, what is this of our 10 S Colts that we're racing at RTF? Like, which one is this again? Like, I know based on the name. So I should say we're doing it so that you guys buy them or claim them, and then you pay $100K or 100 crown to rename them. Like, we're trying to be a crown sink in the game ourselves, but it doesn't always work out that way. I don't know how many horses have actually truly been renamed. It's a good question. Good question. Any other questions though? Last call. Been going 216. That's pretty good for a solo stream. I know Doughboy can do it, but I'm no Doughboy. I'm no Doughboy. Yes, fucking race claimers. Learn claimers before you even race them. You'll just get so in tune with stuff. Even if you saw a horse in a claimer and you didn't claim it, but maybe it won that race, no one claimed it, but maybe it won the race. If I'm entering a horse in a 75K claimer and it won, I'm not going to be offended if you ask to buy the horse for 70K. I'm going to be pretty offended if you ask to buy the horse for 40K. But if I race a horse in a 75K claimer, you see it and like, you know what? I thought about claiming that one, but I didn't pull a trigger because I didn't trust myself enough to do it. One, I swear to God, like if you're actually a fairly new person, I'll probably just cut a deal because I don't need to sell a horse to Crush via claimers or to Poker Player via claimers or anybody else that is in the top 30 stables. If you're new and you didn't pull the trigger on a claimer because you just didn't feel like you knew enough about it to do it, but you wanted to, I'm more likely to sell you a horse near the price point of where racing claimers. There's going to be times I tell you no. Anybody that's asked to buy a horse from us, it's probably been told no more than they've been told yes, for sure. But claimers has the lowest downside to having a profitable stable, for sure. Any other way to race in PFL outside the three major types? I don't even acknowledge handicaps as a race type. I'm sorry. There's only two types then, claimers and stakes. Well, I mean, mains are becoming a thing again, and they're important. So we do have a real crunch at the front end of the schedule, and that the first weekend is the Rising Star Series, and basically you have to have run 3 races to even have a chance to qualify for the Rising Star Series. And I think you probably more or less have to have a win. So where I would like to take like our killers and just put them in graded stakes immediately, and killers, because I'm saying like you don't, there is some horses with limitless potential. There's a lot of horses with limited potential. So the ones that might have a chance at limitless potential, I wouldn't mind racing them in graded stakes right away, but they've actually incentivized me to race in maidens because they've said you need to have a win to be able to show up for the race on Saturday, more or less. So I don't love that about it, but no, I think the race types are maidens, which is non-winners of 1, and then you get claimers, which would be the next step up from that. But I mean, claimers, what are great about claimers is that the market decides if you race the horse where you shouldn't have raced it before. There's really no banned or restrictions on how high or how low you can go on claimers. You could have, we can't support them now, but long term we could support a million Derby claimers. Like there's no reason we couldn't. If the game grows, if horse valuations grow, as stable counts grow, claimers are a place that says the market decides if this horse is too good for this race. If you do grade restricted races and you just happen to have that best S minus, you're going to fucking win 50% of them. That's not the market deciding that horse is too good for the race. It's the schedule deciding the horse is too good for the race. But yeah, maiden claimers and then kind of the benchmark stakes, then grade restricted stakes while they're here, and then non-graded or graded stakes, which is non-restricted stakes. Handicaps exist, but they're not a good race day. Don't do it. I don't even like benchmarks, but I understand some people do. And how late a starter stable is in order to start hitting majors from your standpoint? Well, it depends on, you can come in and buy a horse, so you can win a major next season. And I'm not saying you'd have to spend $50,000. We have enough variability in the majors that the last couple haven't been like in the first 5 choices of horses I'd give you to win the major. So is that heart playing? Is that temper playing? What is it that makes a major winner? As F-Dog pointed out, we've had horses that have been claimed previously that have won majors. We had an S- that won a major as well when there was plenty of S's around, maybe even an S+, I forget. So I don't think anybody's too late to start winning majors, but at the same time, I showed you I've got 65 2-year-olds, and if I had handicap it, we might have 3 horses I think have a chance at it. And I would have probably known some of those before they raced, but some might have surprised me. So why don't you let me race the Colts and claimers and then hope you find a good one and then claim it, and then you can have that success. Again, I do feel dirty even telling people to claim our horses. So just use that analogy with Monkey Tennis, because he puts some of the best horses in claimers too, or Mr. B. The big stables are doing it as a function of volume and a function of active marketplace. When I put a colt in claimer and I race daily, that means I have my colt listed for sale basically at all times. You cannot buy it. That's fine. I'm not going to use the marketplace to sell it. So like that's one of the big disconnects for the new people, is they think they have to go to the marketplace to buy a horse. You don't. You can go to the race schedule. You go to claimers. You can buy a horse that way, and chances are it could have a hideous name if it came from us, or a slightly less worse name if it came from Monkey Tennis or Mr. B or others. I'm not just trying to single out us 3, but at least you have some racing history to understand, one, probably where to race that horse, because we've probably done the distance preference math for you, and 2, you have a better understanding of what the range of outcomes for that horse is. Aim small, miss small. If you make a bad claim but the process was good, you're not going to lose that much money, even if you lost it all. There's a lot of times you won't lose it all. If you have a quality female winning races, when do you decide to start breeding and retire? What is your theory? Is it worth missing a breeding cycle? Well, I would say it doesn't matter what my theory is, because everybody's stable circumstances are different. But we have 2 2-year-olds that I think are fillies that I think are going to race through their 3-year-old season. You tell how little I use filters. Youngest 2. Yeah, this horse sucks because it's not close to peak age. In my opinion, that's just guessing. But it pulls really good morning line odds very consistently. So this is RTF 2-year-old ass. I think we'll race this through the 3-year-old season. Again, you could say Why wouldn't you breed this? Part of that is it's got both of the one-on-ones that exist at RTF naturally. So I would have to use something else to breed it. And two, it pulls really good morning line odds. It's a decent horse, even if it didn't pull really good morning line odds. It's got a pretty good trailing fleet figure, even if it did have pretty good morning line odds. I think it's going to be pretty good as a 3-year-old. So I think we'll race that one. And then the other one we looked at, this is the basically twin a couple years later of Uranus, which is in the left turf sprint tonight. That Uranus is in the S plus. So this might potentially be just short of an S plus, but has really good race record, really good fleet figures. And he's 77 as a 2-year-old. Again, it's yielding, so maybe take 2 off, call it 75. As a 2-year-old, that's still pretty good. And to know that it's a sprinter, that I think this horse will be in the 3-year-old left turf sprint major next season. And another part of that is, it's got 2 to 3 one-on-ones in it. So we've got the pieces we could breed it to. We could breed it to Not For Sale, and we could breed it to Scuba. We've got Mars. There's options, but I'm at the point where I want to just have great racing horses. I don't need to have more horses. But you, on the other hand, might say, I could maybe win the major, but I don't really have that many horses, and having more horses diversifies your own risk. It does. That's basically science at that point. If you're lowering your cost basis in an asset by creating another asset, and you literally have a choice of creating one more or one less, then breeding might make sense for you, even if you have a killer 2-year-old filly. I don't think I would race any fillies past 3, but Ted is. I mean, Ted's raced our first S plus. We sold him. That's actually finally gotten good, I think, as well. It's not on the leaderboard for top 10 horses anymore, but it was for a while. He's racing this as a 5-year-old in S plus. Everybody else would have been like, why? It's got 2 one-on-ones, but these are like the least common one-on-ones that exist at LDF, even if it's hard to make a sprint profile. And this one actually has a pretty good sprint profile, marathon profile. So it would have been slightly challenged to breed this one further, but he's racing an S plus through the 5-year-old season. I would never fucking do that, or at least not for the next 4 or 5 seasons minimum. So I wouldn't go into 4, even for our stable. And we, other than 5 people have more horses than anybody. So breeding is pretty balanced in that there's enough variance there, but I think we're seeing some consistency in outcomes. So as long as you have like a breeding path forward, like you don't have like 3 one-of-ones like immediately in the bloodline, and you have the next breed figured out on what you want to do, like I think the chances that the next horse that you make from a good horse that was a bred good horse are fairly good. And as an example of that, maybe the most controversial retirement we've ever had was All That Jazz, because this horse was dominant, 16 wins and 25 starts, and he retired after the 2-year-old season. Again, this is much earlier. This is like the crop 1, I think. This is the first breeds from the Gen 0. So him taking that good of a horse off the track was a decision point then. Part of that decision was that it had 2 of the 3 one-of-ones that existed at LTS in the bloodline. So the only other options he had to breed were S minuses at the time or with scuba horses. He still took it off the track even in spite of that, and then proceeded to make even more Jazz, which is won 21 times in 32 starts, for Good Measure, which is won 21 and finished on the leaderboard 20 more times in a total of 52 starts. And then he blames me for this one because he bred with our colt. So I guess don't breed with our colts, but it's probably right. I think that's probably good enough. If you type a question in chat and I see it, I'll answer it. But I think we will wrap there. Moral of the story: claimers. The best way, easiest way to learn, the least downside to learn. Wagering is helpful. That's another opportunity if it's legal in your jurisdiction. If you're paying attention to races, chances are you're going to be better at the game, even if they're not your own horses. Those are the ways to learn the game. You can buy unraced, unbred, unnamed, but the biggest advantage of that is that you can name the horse. Most of the rest is not solved. It's not. There's an unknown to how good the horse is, but there is a range of outcomes for the horse, more so than there was in the other game. So I would advocate everybody to, if you still want to buy an unraced, unnamed horse or buy a filly that way, then have that be 50% of your racing profile maximum or portfolio maximum. Have the rest be colts and claimers, even if they don't have breeding value. Two, you're gonna be racing those colts, so you're gonna learn more. You're gonna know more about how to race the filly when it comes time to race the filly. One last question. If you were starting out, what is the lowest female grade you would look for without making your journey too long to get to the higher grades that are quality? Well, that's where I would say, I don't want to say like you have to pick an archetype and like, oh my God, you can never deviate from that. But I do want to say like the archetypes do have their own unique circumstances to them that make them different than another archetype. Not just because one likes to turn left or one likes to turn right. At LTS, there was not shit for fillies at the S level. They all came from one sire except for one, I think. And then there wasn't that many at the S- level. So what did we do? We grabbed like a pile of A+ LTS fillies, and what have we done? We bred an S+ that started with one of those A+ fillies. You couldn't compete like that at RDF. It's different. There was 2 S26s that existed at RDF. There was like 110 S horses that existed at RDF at the start. A bunch of fillies. They're just different. So to tell you a grade would also have to prescribe an archetype for you. And I don't mean the LTS versus RDF as you couldn't possibly choose RDF in that scenario, or you have to choose LTS. We participate in LTS. One reason I fucking love it is because I never have to pay attention to the weather. The weather sucks. But that doesn't mean it's the best archetype. Maybe the best archetype is RDS. There was only one S at RDS to start with, I think. So you could use some of the same examples and come up with a different solution to the answer. If you were buying a filly now and you wanted to compete in majors, I think in almost all archetypes at this point, and almost all archetypes, it would be tough for the direct foal, the foal from this filly you're buying. It would be tough for me to imagine that competing in a major below S at a couple archetypes. Those would be RDF, LDF, RTF, RTS, probably. I think you could probably go to S- for LTS. RDS is weird because the right dirt firm horses just race there. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to tell you the answer is S, but it might be S. But you know what? S's are about to become a lot more affordable too because there's a lot of them. So, all right, I appreciate you all joining. Pay attention to claimers, claim horses, lose your horses and claimers. It's a circle of life. Don't bitch about if you lost a horse and claimers. If you do lose a horse and claimers to me and it's a genuine mistake, reach out to me privately. Don't do that publicly. Because I'm going to give it back to you either way, but I'm going to feel better about giving it back to you if you reach out to me privately than publicly. So, all right. With that, let's wrap. Thanks, everybody.